Sometimes, the most important lessons about leadership happen in the most unexpected places. Like the organic produce aisle of a supermarket on an ordinary Tuesday. It was exactly 4:30 in the afternoon on a sunny Tuesday in San Francisco, and the Whole Foods on 24th Street vibrated with the typical energy of post-work hours. Can you sense that there's something unique about the aroma of a Whole Foods? That comforting blend of freshly baked artisanal breads, ripe organic, fruits, and exotic spices that creates an almost therapeutic atmosphere? The smell of freshly roasted coffee mingled with the subtle fragrance of lavender from eco-friendly cleaning products, while low conversations from sustainability-conscious customers echoed through the impeccably organized aisles. For the regular clientele, tech professionals, young health-conscious families, and retirees with time to read every label, this was a familiar sanctuary of responsible eating. Steph Curry pushed through the automatic doors wearing a faded gray Warriors hoodie, basic jeans, and running shoes that had already covered many miles. A simple cap partially hid his hair, and he carried only a handwritten list folded in his pocket. To any casual observer, he looked exactly like what he represented: a 35-year-old husband fulfilling an important domestic mission. It's impossible not to feel how simplicity can be the most sophisticated of masks. On the other side of the store, Michael Thompson adjusted his manager's badge for the third time and checked his military watch with the precision of someone who had transformed punctuality into religion. At 35 years old, Michael had brought to Whole Foods the same discipline that had characterized his 12 years as an Army sergeant. Every process, every policy, every protocol was followed with the accuracy of a military manual. Michael observed his store with the quiet pride of someone who had built something special through absolute consistency. For him, Whole Foods wasn't just a supermarket. It was a social experiment where genuine equality could exist. Rich or poor, famous or anonymous, everyone received exactly the same treatment: professional, efficient, and strictly within established policies. How often do we confuse rigidity with justice, without realizing we're building walls when we should be building bridges? Steph grabbed a cart and began methodically navigating the aisles, consulting his list with the concentration of someone on a specific mission. Isha had asked for ingredients for a special dinner: premium extra virgin olive oil, artisanal cheeses, organic wines, and exotic spices that would transform an ordinary night into an intimate celebration. The olive oil section was impressive. Dozens of elegant bottles from different regions of Italy, Greece, and Spain, each promising unique flavors capable of elevating any dish. Steph studied the labels with genuine interest, but found himself facing a familiar dilemma: how to choose between options that cost between $50 and $200 per bottle without being able to taste them. He approached the customer service section, where Michael was organizing forms with the meticulousness of someone who considers paperwork a form of art. "Excuse me," Steph said politely. "I'd like to try some of these premium olive oils before deciding. It's for a special dinner, and I want to be sure of the quality." Michael looked up from his papers and quickly assessed Steph. Casual clothes, unpretentious posture, no obvious signs of excessive wealth. Exactly the type of customer who sometimes tried to get special privileges that weren't available to everyone. "Sorry," Michael responded with the professional courtesy he'd practiced for years. "But store policy is not to open sealed products for tasting. We have detailed descriptions on each label, and our team can explain the characteristics of each olive oil." Steph nodded understandingly. "I understand the policy, but I'm looking to buy several expensive olive oils and—" "Sir," Michael interrupted gently but firmly, With all due respect, it doesn't matter how much you intend to spend. We don't have celebrity treatment for anyone here. All customers follow the same rules, no exceptions. What's most striking is how some people use equality as a shield to avoid the complexity of thinking about each situation individually. The words echoed through the service area with a finality that admitted no negotiation. Other nearby customers looked discreetly, some surprised by the almost military firmness in the manager's voice. Steph remained silent for a moment, not processing the refusal itself. He was accustomed to rigid policies, but rather the philosophy behind it. There was something in the way Michael had pronounced celebrity treatment that suggested a deep belief that flexibility was synonymous with favoritism. Celebrity, Steph repeated, genuinely curious. I didn't ask for special treatment for being someone. I asked for a tasting because I want to make an informed purchase. And it's exactly that mentality I try to avoid here, Michael responded, his conviction growing. When we start making exceptions for some people, we inevitably create a two-class system. My store treats everyone with the same dignity, following the same rules. Steph looked around, observing other customers who clearly recognized the irony of the situation. Some people whispered discreetly, but he kept focus on the conversation, intrigued by the manager's logic. I understand your point about equality, Steph said calmly. But may I ask, don't you ever make exceptions? Never adapt policies for specific circumstances? Never, Michael responded with military pride. Rules exist for a reason. The moment we start bending them for some people, we lose the integrity of the entire system. And in that moment, in a Whole Foods, in San Francisco, two men with completely different philosophies about leadership and flexibility were about to teach each other lessons that neither of them expected to learn. Steph looked at the expensive olive oils, then at Michael, and made a decision that would surprise everyone in the store. There are moments in life when our noblest principles can become the most rigid prisons, especially when we confuse consistency with wisdom. Steph remained silent for a few seconds after Michael's firm declaration, as if he were processing not just the refusal, but the entire philosophy behind it. Can you perceive that truly wise people rarely feel the need to win debates, preferring to understand before judging? Instead of getting irritated or insisting, Steph simply reorganized his approach. I respect your position on equality, Steph said calmly. But may I explain why it's important for me to be sure of the quality of these olive oils? Michael crossed his arms, maintaining his professional posture, but clearly prepared to hear another special justification that would try to bend his rules. I'm organizing a charity event next week for 50 needy families in the Bay Area, Steph explained. I want to buy about $5,000 worth of organic products here at Whole Foods to prepare healthy food baskets. The olive oils would be a central part of these baskets. It's impossible not to feel when a legitimate explanation completely transforms the context of a situation. Michael blinked, clearly not expecting this information. $5,000 in products represented one of the largest individual sales his store would see that month. But his expression hardened almost immediately, as if he were protecting himself against the temptation to be flexible. I understand it's for a noble cause, Michael responded, his voice maintaining the same military firmness. But my answer remains the same. Rules are rules, regardless of the reason. If I open an exception for you, even for charity, I create a dangerous precedent. What's most striking is how some people transform consistency into obstinacy, believing that inflexibility is synonymous with integrity. Nearby, Jennifer Walsh, an employee from the cheese section who had worked there for 3 years, observed the interaction with growing discomfort. She knew Michael well enough to admire his dedication to fairness, but something in that situation seemed wrong. Not morally, but humanly. "Mr. Thompson," Jennifer approached hesitantly, "may I suggest that perhaps we could do a supervised tasting? Or connect this gentleman with our olive oil sommelier who could—" "Jennifer," Michael interrupted gently but firmly, "thank you for the suggestion, but the policy is clear. We don't open sealed products for tasting, period." He turned back to Steph. "I can recommend our most popular olive oils based on feedback from other customers, or you can check online reviews of these products." Steph nodded patiently, but there was something in his posture that suggested he was learning more about Michael than about olive oils. "May I ask something personal? Where does this strong conviction about rules come from?" The question caught Michael off guard. For a moment, his professional defenses wavered, and Jennifer saw something that rarely appeared on her boss's face: vulnerability. How often do our most rigid philosophies arise from our deepest wounds? Michael's mind involuntarily wandered to territories he preferred to keep locked away. 12 years in the army had taught him that consistency saves lives, that clear rules applied universally created order amidst chaos. But there was something more personal behind his obsession with fairness. The divorce had happened 5 years before, and Sarah had taken Emma and Lucas to Portland, claiming that Michael was too inflexible and incapable of adapting to the family's needs. The words still echoed in his mind like fragments of an emotional bomb that had never finished exploding. "You only know how to follow orders or give orders," Sarah had screamed in their last argument. "You never learned that real relationships require flexibility, not procedure manuals." Since then, Michael had dedicated his professional life to proving that absolute fairness, treating everyone exactly the same, without exceptions, without favoritism, was not only possible, but morally superior. His store had become the laboratory where he could demonstrate that genuine equality existed. "Rules exist to protect everyone," Michael finally responded, his voice carrying echoes of convictions forged in pain. "The moment we start making exceptions, even for good reasons, we lose the integrity of the system." Steph observed the emotional intensity in the response and realized he was dealing with something much deeper than supermarket policy. There was something almost desperate in the way Michael defended his position. At that moment, an elderly customer approached the service counter, clearly struggling to carry a heavy basket of organic products. Her hands trembled slightly, and she seemed to have difficulty reaching items on the higher shelves. "Excuse me," she said to Michael, "would it be possible for someone to help me carry this to the car? My husband used to come with me, but he passed away last month and—" "Ma'am," Michael interrupted politely, "our policy is that employees cannot leave the store to help with loading. We have carts available and I can call security personnel if you need assistance inside the store." The woman nodded sadly, clearly embarrassed for having asked. Steph and Jennifer exchanged glances, both seeing the same thing. A moment where humanity should supersede procedures. "Store policy," Michael repeated to Steph, as if the elderly woman's example validated his position. "See? If I start making exceptions for some people, where does it end? Fairness means everyone receives exactly the same treatment." But Steph was seeing something different. He was seeing a man so traumatized by the accusation of inflexibility that he had become a prisoner of his own rigidity. A man who confused mechanical equality with real justice. "Michael," Steph said softly, using the first name for the first time, "may I make an observation?" Michael nodded cautiously. "You're treating everyone exactly the same," Steph continued, "but you're not treating anyone really well." The words hung in the air, like an inconvenient truth that no one wanted to touch, but that everyone knew was there. And in that moment, at the Whole Foods on 24th Street, a lesson about the difference between rigid equality and compassionate leadership was about to unfold in a way that would change everyone's perspective. There are moments in life when we discover that our greatest virtue can become our greatest flaw, especially when reality collides head-on with our deepest convictions. Steph's observation echoed through the service area like a truth bomb that temporarily silenced all nearby conversations. Michael stood paralyzed for a few seconds, processing not just the words, but the surgical precision with which they exposed the fundamental flaw in his philosophy. Can you perceive that there are moments when a simple phrase can demolish years of self-justification? I treat everyone with respect," Michael stammered, his military confidence wavering for the first time. "You treat everyone with the same rigidity," Steph corrected gently. "That's not necessarily the same thing as respect." It was in that moment of growing tension that Amanda Foster, a 23-year-old employee from the organic produce section, looked more closely at the man in the hoodie who was questioning her boss's policies. Something in his voice, in his confident but respectful posture, in the way he spoke about charity events. "My God," she whispered to Tyler Brooks, the shift supervisor who was organizing fruit baskets nearby. "That's Steph Curry." The words were spoken in a low voice, but in the charged atmosphere of the service area, they spread like seismic waves among the employees. Tyler looked more closely, mentally adjusted the image of the famous player to include casual clothes, and his eyes widened with recognition. "It's really him," Tyler confirmed in an urgent whisper. "It's Steph Curry, the Warriors player." It's impossible not to feel, when information completely changes, the dynamics of a situation that was already tense. The news began to circulate through the discreet whispers that characterize moments of recognition in public spaces. "It's Steph Curry, the basketball player, the Warriors guy." Each whisper was like a drop added to pressure that was about to explode over Michael's head. Jennifer, who had tried to mediate the situation earlier, caught the whispers and felt her stomach sink. She looked at Michael, who was still absorbed in his philosophical defense of store policies, completely oblivious to the fact that he had spent the last half hour being inflexible with one of the Bay Area's most beloved personalities. "Mr. Thompson," Jennifer approached hesitantly. "May I speak with you for a second?" "Jennifer, I'm in the middle of an important conversation about our policies," Michael responded, irritated by the second interruption. "That's exactly why I need to speak with you," Jennifer insisted, her voice loaded with barely disguised urgency. "Sir, do you know who this customer is?" Michael looked confusedly between Jennifer and Steph, finally beginning to realize that something was happening that he wasn't catching. "He's a customer like any other," Michael responded, his conviction still unshaken. "And all customers follow the same rules." "Mr. Thompson," Jennifer said, taking a deep breath, "this is Steph Curry, the Warriors player, one of the most famous people in San Francisco. What's most striking is how truth, when finally revealed, can transform embarrassment into something even more devastating." Michael felt the world pause for a second. Steph Curry, the man who had led the Warriors to multiple championships, the face of multi-million-dollar campaigns, one of the most beloved sports personalities in Bay Area history, and he had spent half an hour treating him with the same bureaucratic rigidity he applied to anyone. But instead of backing down or apologizing, something strange happened in Michael's mind. Instead of flexing, he hardened even more, as if discovering Steph's identity validated rather than invalidated his approach. "So what?" Michael said, his voice gaining an almost desperate intensity. "I don't care if he's Steph Curry, the President of the United States, or the Pope. Here, everyone follows the same rules, no exceptions." He turned to Steph with a determination that bordered on fanaticism. "Mr. Curry, it's an honor to have you in our store, but my answer remains exactly the same. I won't break policies for anyone, regardless of status or fame." Steph remained calm, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he was seeing much more than stubbornness. He was seeing a man so haunted by the fear of being accused of favoritism that he had become a prisoner of his own rigidity. "Michael," Steph said softly, "may I ask a question? When you talk about treating everyone equally, what exactly does that mean to you?" "It means that it doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have, how famous you are," Michael responded, his voice loaded with almost religious conviction. "Everyone follows the same rules, receives the same treatment, no special favors. And if those rules prevent you from helping someone who genuinely needs help?" Steph asked. "Then the rules are fulfilling their purpose," Michael responded automatically. It was at this moment that Steph realized he was dealing with something much more complex than supermarket policy. He was dealing with a man who had transformed inflexibility into identity, who had confused rigidity with integrity so deeply that any questioning seemed like a personal attack. "Michael," Steph said, his voice gaining a natural authority that made everyone in the area pay attention, "you're right about equality. But there's a fundamental difference between treating everyone the same and treating everyone with dignity." He paused, letting the words settle like seeds in fertile soil. Mechanical equality ignores context, individual needs, special circumstances. Human dignity recognizes that each person is unique and deserves thoughtful consideration, not just automatic application of rules. The words echoed through the store, with a wisdom that cut through all defensiveness and reached the heart of the matter. Other customers had stopped to listen, employees watched in respectful silence, and Michael found himself face to face with a truth he had spent years avoiding. "When you refused to let that lady have help carrying her groceries to the car," Steph continued, "you treated her equally, but not with dignity. When you refused to let me try olive oils for a charity event, you're being consistent, but not necessarily wise." Michael felt his worldview trembling at its foundations. Everything he had based his professional identity on, rigidity, absolute consistency, mechanical application of rules, was being questioned by someone who clearly understood leadership in a way he had never considered. "So, you're saying I should break rules?" Michael asked, his voice revealing genuine confusion. "I'm saying," Steph responded, with a gentleness that disarms any resistance, "that rules should serve people, not the other way around. And that true leadership sometimes requires having the wisdom to know when flexibility serves justice better than rigidity." And in that moment, in a Whole Foods in San Francisco, Michael Thompson was about to discover if he could let his obsession with mechanical equality evolve into something much deeper: leadership with soul. Some of the most profound transformations happen not when we prove we're right, but when we discover a completely new way to be right. Michael Thompson remained silent for long seconds after Steph's words, as if he were processing not just a different philosophy, but a possibility of existing in the world that he had never considered. Can you perceive that there are moments when our soul recognizes a truth before our mind is ready to accept it? I never thought of it that way, Michael finally admitted, his voice loaded with a vulnerability his employees rarely saw. I always thought flexibility was the first step toward favoritism. Steph smiled with that natural gentleness that characterized his best human interactions. Flexibility without principles can become favoritism, but flexibility with clear purpose becomes wisdom. And then Steph did something no one in the store expected, especially after half an hour of refusals and conflicting philosophies. "Michael," he said, taking his wallet from his pocket, "I'm going to buy $5,000 worth of products today. All the olive oils I wanted to try, all the premium cheeses, organic wines, exotic spices, everything without tasting anything." It's impossible not to feel when we witness an act of trust so pure that it transforms cynicism into hope. Michael looked at Steph as if he hadn't heard correctly. "Mr. Curry, you don't need to—" "I'm not doing this out of obligation," Steph interrupted gently. "I'm doing it because I trust that a store run by someone who cares so much about fairness must have products of exceptional quality." He paused, letting the logic settle like a bridge between their different worlds. "But I have a special request. I want you to personally help me choose all these products, not as a manager following protocol, but as someone who understands quality organic food." What's most striking is how a request for help can simultaneously be a vote of confidence and an opportunity for redemption. Michael felt something dissolving inside his chest. Not his convictions about fairness, but the defensive rigidity he had built around those convictions. You really want my help? After all this?" "Especially after all this," Steph confirmed. "You clearly care about doing things right. Now I want to see what it would look like if you applied that integrity with a little more thoughtful flexibility." During the next hour, something magical happened at the Whole Foods on 24th Street. Michael guided Steph through the store with meticulous attention that surprised even employees who had known him for years. For each olive oil, he explained not just technical characteristics, but which ones paired best with different types of families, considering diverse tastes and nutritional needs. For families with children, Michael explained, selecting a milder olive oil, this one has a less intense flavor, but maintains all the nutritional benefits. And for the elderly, this one with natural rosemary infusion can help with memory. Steph watched fascinated as Michael applied the same meticulous care he used to follow rules, but now directed toward understanding and meeting individual needs. It was like watching someone discover that talent for precision could serve compassion instead of just compliance. "Do you see the difference?" Steph asked gently, as Michael selected cheeses, thinking about textures that would work for different ages. I'm still applying rigorous standards," Michael said, as if he were discovering this in real time. "But instead of applying the same rules to everyone, I'm applying the same level of care to different needs." It's impossible not to feel when we witness the exact moment someone evolves from rule follower to wisdom applier. Jennifer watched her boss's transformation with a mixture of admiration and relief. "I've never seen Mr. Thompson so attentive," she whispered to Amanda. "It's like he discovered he can be meticulous and human at the same time." When they reached checkout, Steph had selected not just products for the charity event, but had asked Michael to create personalized baskets considering different family situations. Some for large families, others for elderly people alone. Some focused on child nutrition. "Michael," Steph said as they processed the purchase, "may I make a proposal?" "Of course," Michael responded, his previous resistance completely dissolved. "How about we make this a regular partnership? Once a month, I organize charity events, and you help me curate specific products for different needs. You maintain your high standards, I ensure needy families receive exceptional quality nutrition." Michael looked around his store, at Jennifer smiling proudly, at Amanda and Tyler watching with admiration, at other customers who had witnessed the entire interaction, and realized he had found something he had been searching for years without knowing. A way to apply his obsession with excellence that served people instead of just policies. "I would love to," Michael said, and for the first time in months, his smile reached his eyes. 3 months later, the Whole Foods on 24th Street had become known not just for the quality of its products, but for the quality of its service. Michael still maintained rigorous standards, but now applied those standards to create personalized experiences instead of standardized experiences. The elderly lady who had been refused help carrying groceries to her car now had a designated employee who helped her every week. Not because Michael broke rules, but because he had created a new rule: special assistance for customers who demonstrate legitimate need. The difference, Michael explained to new employees during training, isn't between following rules or breaking rules. It's between applying rules mechanically or applying principles wisely. Steph visited monthly, not just for charity events, but because he had developed genuine friendship with Michael. "You taught me something important," Michael said during one of these visits, "that real leadership isn't about control, it's about service. And real service considers not just policies, but people." On his office wall, Michael hung a photo. Him and Steph delivering organic food baskets to needy families, both smiling with the satisfaction that comes from using precision to serve purpose. And below the photo, a simple plaque. Equality isn't treating everyone exactly the same. It's giving each person exactly what they need to thrive. Because in the end, Michael discovered that his greatest strength, attention to detail and commitment to fairness, could serve humanity in a much more powerful way when tempered with wisdom instead of rigidity. And sometimes, the best lessons about leadership don't come from books or seminars, but from authentic human interactions where two people choose growth over ego. A choice that transforms not just individuals, but entire communities.